music shows are as legendary as this one. For this extra long video, WatchMojoUK looks at 40 of Top of the Pop's most iconic moments, from its best artists to banned songs to awful mime jobs. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Let us know in the comments what your most beloved Top of the Pop's memory is.
Around the world, pop music, wherever you are, pop music, dance to the street, anything you like.
First up, we're counting down the top 10 worst Top of the Pop's lip syncs. For this list, we'll be looking at the most hilarious or embarrassing attempts at miming songs on this legendary show. However, we will also be including some instances of other band members miming, not just the singers. Number 10, the Pogues.
It was Christmas Eve, babe.
Fairy Tale in New York is a timeless Christmas favorite, but on this occasion, singer Shane MacGowan celebrated perhaps a bit too much. The performer was visibly inebriated, and his miming could frankly not be worse.
You're an old slut and jumping there, almost dead on a trip in that bed.
Kirsty MacColl, on the other hand, does a fantastic job, which just makes Shane's attempt look even worse. It's sloppy, it's half-arsed, and honestly, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Down with my own, can't make it all alone. I build my dreams around you.
Number 9, M.
Get down. Pop, pop, pop music, pop, pop, pop music.
At least our previous entries' performers actually put some effort in, but we're not sure the same could be said about this rendition of pop music. Robin Scott really phones this one in with minimal flourish, almost as if he was forced to be there.
Beat by bow, on top about. Pop music, top about. Pop music, shoo-be-doo-be-doo-up.
He misses a few cues throughout the performance, but what makes this one so unconvincing is when he says to hell with the microphone and sings into another device entirely.
Pop, pop music, dance to the street, anything you like. Do it in your car, in the middle of the night.
A brilliant song, but maybe not the best performance of it. Number 8, Faith No More. As we've seen, sometimes a bad lip sync can be totally on purpose. Some bands thought the whole miming thing was ridiculous, so they decided to make a mockery of it. Lead singer Mike Patton is a true legend, and you can't say he wasn't trying to put on a show here. But it's clear he isn't even trying to make it look realistic, often putting his fingers in his mouth and making rude gestures. It definitely ranks among the funniest TOTP performances of all time. It's a wonder the band was ever invited back on the show again after this one. Number 7, Gary Glitter. When it comes to bad lip syncing, there's putting in no effort, and then there's going way too over the top. The now disgraced singer was invited onto the show countless times, and almost every time he hammed it up.
They didn't like my hair, the clothes I love to wear. They didn't realize that I was strong enough for two.
You can argue it's part of the show, but for many it was just too much. Those haunting stares, the exaggerated movements, it really doesn't give off the impression he was actually singing, and if anything, just drew more attention to the fact he was putting it on.
Come back in, you know I've been so far away since you were me.
Number 6, John Gordon Sinclair and the Scotland Squad.
And away in the distance, I can just make out this ball coming in from the left, and I'm starting to run.
Where to even begin with this one? The word unconvincing definitely comes to mind when watching the lead performer try to replicate the words blaring from the playback, but the energy simply does not match and feels wildly pantomime, not to mention the complete lack of attempting the heavy breathing we hear in the track.
And he's pointing straight at the spot! That's brilliant.
Legend has it that the Scottish football stars were so drunk they could barely stay on their feet. So with that in mind, it's quite remarkable they were actually able to pull this one off at all.
It's not the ball you're kicking, you idiot! It's me!
Number 5. Eels.
Life is hard, and so am I. You'd better give me something so I don't die.
Having to mime must have really wound these guys up, because they simply weren't willing to make it look convincing. You can tell something is up instantly when you look at the instruments the band brought on stage to perform. That's right, they're toys.
Jesus and his lawyer are coming back.
While lead vocalist Mark Oliver Everett unenthusiastically lip-syncs the words to Novocaine for the Soul, the others are just taking the mick. Eventually, they give up altogether and start destroying the toys on stage. How we're supposed to believe the music is still playing with no instruments, we don't know. Number 4. Armand van Helden. We've said in our past videos that this is probably our favorite TOTP performance of all time because of how truly bizarre it is. But even we have to admit that the Blue Man is not quite nailing the lip sync for Coochie.
I call your celly late at night. I want that coochie and I'll do it right.
Oftentimes, his lip movements do not match the words being played at all. Let's ignore the fact that he doesn't have a microphone or anything too.
When I call your celly late at night. I want that coochie and I'll do it right.
Maybe everyone was too distracted by the fact that there was a naked blue man on stage to notice though. Number 3. Nirvana. If you've never seen this performance of Smells Like Teen Spirit before, then you're in for a treat. Kurt Cobain was allowed to do vocals for this track, but that was the extent of their free will, as the instruments had to be mimed. While Cobain's goofy rendition of the song here is legendary, it's the bad miming of guitar strums and such that really make it hilarious. Of course, this little stunt got them in trouble with the show, but in our books, it was totally worth it. Number 2. Oasis. You can always leave it to the Gallagher brothers to cause some chaos. When they were told to lip-sync Roll With It back in 1995, they didn't take it well. So they decided to mess with the producers by changing around their formation. While Liam was usually the one behind the lead vocals, Noel took his place instead. And of course, Liam pretended to play Noel's guitar. It was a huge middle finger to the TOTP way of running things, and we loved every second of it. Number 1. All About Eve. What's the worst way to lip sync? Well, by not moving your mouth at all. In this legendarily disastrous moment, the band did not realize that their track, Martha's Harbour, was already playing. As a result, they just sort of sat there in silence for a while.
Crashing at the bow, I am a galley slave, my love. If only I could buy.
It was only when a stagehand let them know the track was already playing that they tried to mime it, but it was too little too late, and the visibly flustered group couldn't manage it.
I've been run aground. Sad for a sailor.
As a result of the blunder, they would be invited back onto the show the next week, this time performing live rather than lip-syncing. Next, it's time for the top 10 underrated Top of the Pops performances. For this list, we'll be looking at 10 live performances on the legendary musical show that really don't get the praise they deserve. Number 10, Break It Down Again, Tears for Fears.
Here we go. Break it down again.
By the time Tears for Fears performed this track in the TOTP studio, they were already veterans to the show, but this time around there was absolutely no miming involved. Break It Down Again is not just one of their most underrated performances, but also one of their most underrated tracks in general. Roland's vocals build a song that bleeds optimism like few others do.
When it's all mixed up, better break it down.
While we'll always cherish our memories of them on stage for Shout, Change, and Mad World, this powerful performance demands your respect.
Won't stop the rain from falling, we're sleeping underground. How I break it down.
Number 9, 1 Week, Bare Naked Ladies.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Got to hate the signs and I'm angry.
Look, this song has basically achieved meme status over the years, which could lead many to dismiss this performance, but there's honestly so much soul here. In fact, we'd go as far as to say that this is better than the studio version. It's very easy to be impressed by the delivery of the fast-paced lyrics, but that's not all this February 19th, 1999 performance has to offer. In fact, there's a much more melancholy tone to this live version, which adds a whole new layer to it. You certainly won't listen to the song the same way ever again. Number 8, Babushka, Kate Bush.
She wanted to test her husband. She knew exactly what to do.
When you think of all-timers on TOTP, you undoubtedly think of Kate Bush's early rendition of Wuthering Heights when she was just 19 years of age. But you're doing yourself dirty if you don't turn your attention to her 1980 appearance with Babushka.
She sang the letter I, babushka, babushka, babushka.
That iconic music video is ingrained in our memories, but how could Kate and the production team replicate its imagery on stage? By splitting the beautiful songstress's costume in half. Accompanied by some awesome light displays and editing, this Top of the Pops version is a must-see for any Kate Bush fan. Number 7, Return of the Mac, Mark Morrison.
Well, I try to tell you so, yes I did, but I guess you didn't know. As I said, the story goes.
Return of the Mac is quintessential 90s R&B, and nothing will quite transport you back to that era than listening to this near-perfect rendition. There's no auto-tune here, just pure talent on display. Morrison oozes charisma here with a track that hit number 1 in 1996. While his success wouldn't lead to many more tracks down the line, we at least have this great little time capsule we can come back to remind us of Mark Morrison at his peak. Number 6, Master and Servant, Depeche Mode. It's a miracle this song actually appeared on Top of the Pops. On face value, it appears to be a sort of BDSM-inspired anthem, but in reality, there's more of a socio-political message behind it. Regardless, rumor has it that the band was very nearly blocked from performing this killer track on TOTP. So what lands it here on this list other than that? Well, the vibes in the studio were absolutely immaculate for this rendition. A combination of the band's flair and the awesome light show just makes you wish you were there in the crowd singing along. Number 5, the ballad of Tom Jones, Space.
What did I do wrong?
Oh, you nearly drove me cuckoo.
Am I really all that bad?
You're worse than Hannibal Lecter, Charlie Manson, Freddy Krueger.
It's really difficult to not have a big smile on your face when watching this duet. The brilliant combo of Tommy Scott and Catatonia's Karis Matthews deliver a performance that's equal parts singing and stage play.
You'll never know, but you saved our lives. And I've never thrown my knickers at you.
I don't come from Wales.
Given the song's theme of a married couple turned worst enemies, the duo do a fantastic job conveying the spite their characters feel for one another.
We hate each other's guts.
Still wanna poison your pizza.
And I still wanna cut off your neck.
And yet, Tommy still can't help but crack a cheeky grin at just how fun the song is. If you're having a bad day, give this one a listen.
I've never thrown my knickers at
I don't come from Wales.
Number 4, Ashes to Ashes, Faith No More.
Give it all to you, then I'll be closer.
This band's transition from rowdy to sexy was a very fluid one, but still most people will remember them for their track Epic. Ashes to Ashes offers a much different product, with Mike Patton trading in the beloved nasally vocals for a smoother, more sophisticated delivery. Ashes to Ashes is criminally underrated, as is evidenced here, where they managed to get the pop music crazy audience invested in this heavy rock banger. If you want an alternative metal track that exemplifies suave, turn this live performance on. Number 3, Ghosts, Japan.
When the room is quiet, the daylight almost gone.
Not many bands break up the moment they reach the pinnacle, but that was the case for this next level new wave group. Watching this with the knowledge that they were just months away from splitting adds a new depth to an already perfect track.
In every door, the ghosts of my life blow wilder than before.
You get a sense of unease just by looking at each individual performer. And of course, no one has a voice quite like David Sylvian's, a truly haunting performance by one of the all-time greats.
The ghosts of my life blow wilder than the wind.
Number 2, Killer, Adamski featuring Seal. It feels like a disservice to say this song simply features Seal, because his voice is what makes this performance so great. That said, Adamski could have easily phoned in his synth component to the song, but instead added new elements to the beat that make it stand out from the already incredible original. It's a performance so good, they were invited to do it twice, and the Top of the Pops audience didn't realize how lucky they were to see this Christmas edition of the show back in 1990. Bonus points to Adamski for rocking that Acura shit, by the way. Number 1, Tender, Blur.
Someone that you love too much, tender is the day.
1999 was a solid year for TOTP, as it featured this soulful performance by Damon Albarn. Given that this song was written by him after his breakup with Justine Frischmann, there's a sadness that permeates from the track.
Come on, come on, come on, get through it. Come on, come on, come on.
Backed by an incredible choir, Albarn and the gang deliver an act that is equal parts heartbreaking and hopeful.
I'm waiting for that feeling, waiting for that feeling, waiting for that feeling to come.
For Best Blur TOTP Performance, many would point towards their 95 rendition of Country House, but for our money, there's just something about this one that gets us tearing up every time. Next, we're going to be counting down the top 10 songs and artists banned from Top of the Pops. For this list, we'll be looking at all those lovely tunes that have been banned on the iconic British television programme, for better or worse. Number 10, We Call It Acid by D-Mob. In 1988, the acid house subgenre was facing a lot of heat from the press because of its ties to drug use. So it wasn't really good for optics when a song named We Call It Acid was presented to the Top of the Pops audience by a host wearing a shirt with a smiley face on it, a symbol which was often associated with taps of acid.
It's D-Mob featuring Gary Hazeman, and We Call It Acid!
That would be the last time the song was featured on the show, as the BBC swiftly banned it. Surprisingly, the song's musician Danny D actually claimed there was no relation between the song and drug use, expressing he himself was not a drug user and was just celebrating the genre. But that wasn't enough for the Beeb. Number 9, Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Relax, don't do it when you wanna go to it. Relax, don't do it when you wanna go.
It seems almost impossible to dislike Frankie Goes to Hollywood's breakout song, but it appears the band's not-so-subtle eroticism made it hard for the suits at the BBC to relax. Funnily enough, it was actually the BBC's fault that the song became such a mega hit. It was floundering in the charts before the band performed it on Top of the Pops, at which point it exploded. But that's when the Stiffs noticed all the sexual innuendos and called for the song to be banned from TOTP and all BBC radio stations. But the song was such an undeniable hit, and by the end of the year, they were forced to lift the ban and allow Frankie to perform on the Christmas Day special episode. Number 8, Disarm by the Smashing Pumpkins.
This is the first time they've ever done Top of the Pops, but I'm sure it won't be the last. Yes, it's time for that Top of the Pops exclusive. It's the Smashing Pumpkins with Tonight.
This one's another victim of weird misinterpretation. In 1993, Britain was shocked by the murder of young James Bulger by two 10-year-old boys. But what does that have to do with the Smashing Pumpkins' standout record? Well, very little. But that's not how some BBC officials saw it.
Cut that little child inside of me and such a part of you.
The song contains lyrics like, "Cut that little child," and "The killer in me is the killer in you," which some thought were too closely tied to the horrific events involving Bulger. Despite the fact that these lyrics were actually more poetic and in reference to Billy Corgan's fractured relationship with his parents, Top of the Pops insisted that the song be banned from the show. Number 7, A Pair of Brown Eyes by the Pogues. It wasn't always live performances that were banned on Top of the Pops. Often when a performer couldn't or didn't want to appear on the show that week, they'd simply air the music video instead. This didn't always work out for the bands though. Take the Pogues for example with their song A Pair of Brown Eyes, which had a music video that was highly critical of then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
We're a pair of brown eyes.
The music video portrays her treatment of Ireland akin to that of Big Brother from George Orwell's 1984. To avoid any controversy, Top of the Pops decided to simply never broadcast this clip.
I left the place, sometimes crawling, sometimes walking.
Number 6, Creep by Radiohead.
When you were here before, I couldn't look you in the eye.
These days, Creep stands as the most divisive song in Radiohead's incredible library. Some fans love it, while others absolutely despise it. It seemed like the BBC fell into the latter camp back in 1992 when the song was released, and they absolutely refused to play it. The reason? Just a simple one, it was allegedly too depressing. Oh yeah, and it contained an F-bomb. The band decided to combat this later in 1993 by re-releasing the song without the expletives in the lyrics, and that seemed to be enough as far as the BBC was concerned. The band were finally allowed to play it on Top of the Pops. Number 5, Peaches by The Stranglers. Hitting number 8 in the charts is no easy feat, especially with a song as cheeky as this.
Walking on the beaches, looking at the beaches.
Alongside Golden Brown and No More Heroes, Peaches is among The Stranglers' most recognizable tracks, depicting the inner monologue of a pervy bloke going around the beaches and getting an eyeful of the ladies.
Liberation for women, that's what I preach.
It was a miracle that even a heavily censored version of the track was ever able to air on BBC Radio. But Top of the Pops was a step too far in the eyes of the Beeb. So when invited onto the show, they were instead asked to play the single's B-side track, Go Buddy Go. What a shame, imagine what could have been. Number 4, The Prodigy.
Second week at number 1, of course. Prodigy are Top of the Pops.
In some cases, it wasn't just one song that was blacklisted by Top of the Pops. The Prodigy were making waves in the late 90s in the EDM scene, but the world, or more so older audiences, weren't ready for them yet. BBC believed that their number 1 record Firestarter would encourage people to commit arson around Britain, but reluctantly played it a couple of times on the show before pulling the plug.
I'm a Firestarter, twisted Firestarter.
One song they would absolutely not budge on though was Smack My Bitch Up, which they labelled as sexist and potentially inciting violence against women. The song was never allowed to appear on the show, despite its chart-topping success. Number 3, Je t'aime, moi non plus, by Serge Gainsbourg. The first ever band number 1 track in the show's history was back in 1969 when French artist Serge Gainsbourg lit the world on fire with his raunchy romance anthem. The song, which translates to I love you, me neither, was seen as far too lewd for the BBC's television show, including lyrics like I go and I come between your loins. Though you'd have to actually be able to understand French to pick up on these lyrics. It also featured a quivering segment that some believe to be the sounds of an orgasm, though that was debated by Gainsbourg. But he didn't really have any say when it came to TOTP adding this to the blacklist. Number 2, God Save the Queen by Sex Pistols. Sex Pistols certainly didn't make any friends back in '77 when they released this anti-authority track.
God save the Queen! The fascist regime!
Radio stations refused to play it, and even Woolworths refused to sell the record. Something about their critique towards the British monarchy didn't sit right with big names in the music world, despite resonating with many of the working class.
God save the Queen! We mean it, man!
Famously, many claimed it was the BBC who blocked the track from reaching number 1 on the UK singles chart. So it wouldn't come as any surprise that the track was also banned from Top of the Pops. Number 1, Happy Mondays.
Now for a band that's come all the way from Manchester. They're called Happy Monday, featuring a very special guest, Kirsty MacColl. The song's Alleluia, and it's number 30.
Happy Mondays lead Shaun Ryder has been quite vocal over the years about his feud with Top of the Pops. The band's music wasn't exactly controversial, so you might be wondering how they managed to find themselves walloped by the banhammer on the biggest musical show in Britain at the time. Well, it was more of a backstage issue. Happy Mondays appeared a few times on the show, and on one episode, an altercation backstage wherein one of the BBC bigwigs scolded Shaun took place.
Don't know what you saw, which notes against the law.
Instead of bowing down and taking it, Shaun instead opted to tell him to, quote, "Fuck off, knobhead." As you can imagine, the pompous bloke didn't like that. The band was banned from the show, but fortunately, it didn't impede their success.
Won't be no misfit in my household today.
But that he was, thank God, that he never hurt nobody.
And finally, it's time to count down the top 10 greatest Top of the Pops performances of all time. For this list, we'll be ranking the most memorable, unique, or classic times artists took to the Top of the Pop stage and made history. Number 10, Spice Girls, Wannabe. We take the Spice Girls 100% seriously. No, stop laughing and hear us out. There's a sense of pride in knowing that millions of people tuned in to watch their performance of Wannabe on Top of the Pops back in 1996. Pride in how the Cool Britannia era wasn't only a success at home, but a crossover success abroad, with girl power becoming a rallying cry for pop music fans around the world.
If you really bug me, then I'll say goodbye.
The Spice Girls felt like certified stars as they reenacted their music video for the studio audience, while the lip syncing feels loose and fun without being overtly cheeky or dismissive. And that's no joke. Number 9, Blur, Country House. Speaking of Britpop, does everyone remember the back and forth between hit chart frenemies Blur and Oasis? If not, allow us to jog that memory with this Top of the Pops performance of Country House. The band's bassist, Alex James, mugs for the camera with this Oasis shirt, while the entire band seems to be at ease and confident with their pantomime. The stage is a little crowded between the band and the horn section, but the crowd hollers for more throughout, and Blur is more than willing to play into the pop hysteria. Number 8, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Relax. There have been times when the visual and pantomime emphasis on Top of the Pops actually works as an asset to the artist in question, as opposed to a hindrance. Frankie Goes to Hollywood was one of those acts, since their appearance on the show actually did what it was supposed to do, increase their chart success. Relax had stalled a bit in the UK charts only 2 months prior to Frankie's gig on the show, but this performance changed everything. The crowd is obviously into it, while the band's magnetic charisma is set fully on display, a case when seeing the artist and hearing the music finally made that all-important connection with the fans. Number 7, Culture Club. Do you really want to hurt me?
Do you really want to hurt me?
The landscape for out and proud LGBTQ+ performers was very different back when Culture Club took to the Top of the Pops stage in 1982. As a result, the band's appearances on Top of the Pops, including when they performed their hit Do You Really Want to Hit Me, was, for some, their first experience seeing Boy George and company in the flesh.
Do you really want to hurt me? Do you really want to make me cry?
The song's innate smoothness and laid-back reggae vibe allows George to take a visual center stage, and he absolutely made the most of his time. His stage presence is at once commanding and shy, a true rock star who nevertheless feels close enough to touch. You just can't take your eyes off him.
Make me cry.
Number 6, Slade. Mama, we're all crazy now.
I don't want to drink my whiskey like you do.
And did Slade know how to dress or what? It's easy to see and hear how the 1980s hair metal scene was influenced by these rough and tumble glam rock hooligans, both in sound and style.
I said, Mama, we're all crazy now.
Slade was truly something else, and their uniqueness was set on full display as the band leaned into their lip sync of their hit Mama, We're All Crazy Now. 70s glam bands often prided themselves on looking absolutely outrageous, but Slade was on another level with their anarchic accessorizing.
I don't want to drink my whiskey, but still do.
The music never takes backseat, however, and Mama, We're All Crazy Now offered further proof of the clever and strong sensibilities that lurked within Slade's songwriting prowess. Number 5, Tubeway Army. Are Friends Electric?
It's cold outside.
It's amazing to look back and witness how ahead of the curve Gary Newman was when it came to the world of electronic music and bringing that world to the mainstream. The man's Top of the Pop appearance with his band Tubeway Army hit back in 1979 when punk rock was still raging. New wave was on the horizon, and heavy metal was poised for commercial chart supremacy. But Newman was having none of that, instead bringing to the stage a strange, stark, and stylish visual presence that was armed with some surprisingly catchy hooks. The crowd almost doesn't seem ready to hear of Friends Electric and its Kraftwerk-influenced poptronica. By the end, he seems to have them in the palm of his hand. Number 4, Shalimar. A Night to Remember.
When you love someone, it's natural, not demanding.
It doesn't matter whether or not you call it the backslide or the moonwalk, so long as you credit Shalimar's Jeffrey Daniel for bringing the dance move to Top of the Pops nearly a year before Michael Jackson would do so on the TV special Motown 25. Shalimar's pop R&B sound was smooth as silk, but the TOTP performance just focuses on Daniel's righteous dance moves, a pop and lock fest that may seem retro today, but was absolutely revolutionary back in '82. Daniel brings together elements of mime and breakdancing to his performance, as the song track plays in the background, and it all works brilliantly. Because who needs a band, really? Number 3, Lennon/Ono with the Plastic Ono Band. Instant Karma.
Instant karma's gonna get you. Gonna knock you right in the head.
Part performance art, and just a wee bit strange. This sort of describes the vibe of John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Top of the Pops rendition of Instant Karma, alongside the Plastic Ono Band. Lennon's facial expression and body language appears coiled, tense, and aggressive, while Yoko's blindfolded sign routine feels indebted to Bob Dylan's subterranean homesick blues, only twice as distracting. Meanwhile, the mini-skirted mob dances about, oblivious to the performance's more artistic leanings, in deference to a little shaking of the moneymaker. Does that all fit together? No, not at all, but that's exactly what makes the performance so compelling.
Where we all shine on, like the moons and the stars and the sun.
Number 2, Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights.
Out on the winding, windy moor, sweet roll and falling green.
It doesn't matter whether you prefer the black dress version or the white dress version of Kate Bush's Top of the Pops appearance from 1978, you win every single time. Kate was barely 20 when she decided to sing her hit Wuthering Heights live to a backing track for TOTP, but her inimitable presence is already set fully on display. Said simply, there's no one quite like Kate Bush. From her eccentric, interpretive dance moves, ethereal beauty, and absolutely massive voice, she's one of a kind, and these Top of the Pops performances solidify these notions in magical fashion. It's amazing to think that at this point, Bush's career was just getting started. Before we unveil our number 1 pick, here's some honorable mentions. The Smiths, This Charming Man. Perhaps Morrissey at his most Morrissey. Rod Stewart, Maggie May. Rod, The Faces, and John Peel.
All you did was wreck my bed, and in the morning kick me in the head.
T-Rex, Hot Love, sounding the clarion call for glam rock. Number 1, David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars, Starman.
Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low.
Ease, Grace, Outer Space. David Bowie's performance of Starman for Top of the Pops was something special. A moment that changed the lives of so many kids back in 1972.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds.
Kids who almost immediately went out and formed bands of their own, inspired by Bowie's androgynous psychedelic form of interstellar rock and roll. The interactions between guitarist Mick Ronson and Bowie are fun to watch, as is the almost hypnotic sway of the dancing crowd.
There's a starman waiting in the sky.
It's a communal celebration of sorts, this idea that something special was occurring in that specific studio at that specific moment. Ultimately, however, it also proved one thing, that this was Bowie's world and we were just visiting. You agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojoUK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.